If you're looking for a new way to support Side Mission, check out Dubby.gg, an energy supplement company trying to make a difference. Make sure to use code SIDEMISSION for 15% off your order. Thank you, Dubby, for sponsoring this episode, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. Like always, I'm your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by just one of the boys, Matt Beck. And today, Matt, we're talking about another remake. And we've had quite a few good ones this year when it comes to remakes and remasters. We've had, you look at the Dead Space remake, Resident Evil 4, which is currently up for Game of the Year. Don't care, because I will not be watching the Game Awards, and I will make my agenda known right now that I don't give a shit about the Game Awards this year. I really don't. But we've seen two good remakes there. We've seen a couple good remasters in Metroid Prime Remastered. Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe was really good as well. And now, Super Mario RPG Remake, Matt. And I can't lie, I think Nintendo hit another pretty solid home run here with this remake. I think that it's, at face value, one of the best looking games on the Switch. It's a very, very good looking game, very beautiful looking game. The art style is great. The color scheme's great. I love a lot that they did there. But the game itself is also a lot of fun. And I think, Matt, that me and you were both excited for this game. I know Kyle was as well, but he was unable to pick up the game and play it in time to do on the episode. Just, Matt, when this game first got revealed, I know that a lot of people, I remember the reveal itself. I remember that they showed the original footage from the game, from the original version of the game. And a lot of people took that as, oh, so they're going to add it to whatever the online service is that Super Mario RPG was on, whether it was N64, SNES, whatever. I can't really remember. I never played the original. A lot of people thought they were just adding it to that online catalog. Yeah. You could just play the original game. And then the graphics swapped to the modern day graphics, and we realized it was a full-blown remake. How excited were you for this game, Matt?
Man, so the day before, I remember that the big leaker, because we got the direct the next day, was talking about that there was going to be an announcement for a Super Nintendo game, and it was going to be a complete remake. And, there's a lot of speculation going on. To me, originally, I thought it was going to be something like Yoshi's Island or something. Mario RPG was one of the last things I expected to see get a remake, and when that trailer showed up, I dropped my phone. I'm pretty sure I was driving at the time. I'm pretty sure I wrecked my van into something. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually at home watching it. But watching that trailer and then how it just switched over to the modern day graphics, it was just so surreal, because this is something that Nintendo does not like to do. They don't like to remake games. But the fact is, this game has been in this complication because a lot of the characters are actually owned by Square Enix, because this was made by Squaresoft back with Nintendo during the Super Nintendo days. And it's just been like, nobody really knows who owns who. Obviously, Nintendo owns the Mario characters, but it's kind of like, why these characters are never used. Like, Gino's absolutely one of the most popular characters. He's the little puppet that you see. Yes. And like, I kid you not, he's one of the most highly requested Super Smash Brothers fighters to be included. Like, he pops up in the lists all the time. But, they never did anything with him in Smash outside of give him a skin for the Mii fighter, which was, the best they could do, I guess, because, like... And then, after this game, the remake came out, we finally figured it out. Square Enix technically owns majority of the characters that are not anything related to the Mushroom Kingdom. So... that explains a lot. And but yeah, I really was so excited to see this, because the Mario RPG series has been kind of iffy lately, because Paper Mario has slowly started steering away from the more RPG mechanics and the more unique enemy types, because nowadays in the Paper Mario games, the enemies are just basic Goombas, basic Koopas, nothing special about them, no names, no characteristics that makes them stick out in an RPG like it should. So this is the original RPG. This is before Paper Mario. So I was so happy to freaking see this game, and that Nintendo is finally giving it new life for new people who have never got to experience before.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of the same, because that I fall into the category that you just mentioned, of people that had never played Super Mario RPG, that I never really had a way to play it growing up. I never had a Super Nintendo, so That was never really an option to play. It was never available to me, and obviously I'm not going to pay the incredibly overpriced current market prices for retro consoles and retro games right now. That's certainly not happening. So when they announced they were going to remake it, I was really excited to finally experience this game. And I will say, I think for about 85 to 90% of this game, I'm very, very pleased, and I see why it is highly regarded. I think that it's really, really simple and easy to pick up turn-based combat. That's cool. I think that the fact that you can also avoid conflict is really good. I feel like a lot of RPGs that relied on turn-based combat from this era of gaming, a lot of them rely on random encounters, and there are still turn-based RPGs nowadays that rely on random encounters that you can't really avoid. It just kind of happens whether you like it or not. And I like that. I think that everything on a performance standpoint is a major positive. I think that it's very clear that this game, there was a lot of effort put into rebuilding this game from the ground up. Those are words you've heard me say a lot over the last 2 years when we've covered the amount of remakes that we've covered. But it's nice to see Nintendo and Square put the effort that they did into this remake and into making it run good. There's not really been many performance issues as far as I could tell. For all the talk of the Switch's age, I think this is one of the better looking games this year when you factor in what system it's on. I was really pleased with it as a whole. The story and this is, I'll go ahead and dive into a little bit of light critique here. For everything that I do love about this game, Matt, the age of this game does show a little bit when you get to kind of the in-depth part of the combat and the story itself. It's this is very old school in terms of the combat. While it's very easy to pick up and very easy to learn, it also, I could see it burning out people very, very quickly because there's not a lot of variety, especially in the earlier hours. The earlier hours do turn into a little bit of a slog to kind of get to the point where now you're adding a few new party members, and that kind of changes up the flow of the gameplay, especially when you get to where you've added more than just two, where you have more than 3 party members in total, and you have to start making choices of, who do you want to use in your active party? Who do you want to use in your battles like that? I feel like the combat kind of starts to find its footing a little bit, but it takes a while to get there. And I think that is something that the game, I think that's a critique of the original game, likely in all honesty as well. But I do think the game does show its age there and in the story a little bit, Matt.
Yeah, it definitely does. You can tell that it definitely came out around the Super Nintendo days. It's pretty much just the same, song and dance with the RPGs, especially the way Square Enix likes to make them as far as their story goes. But I mean, it's cool. It's has it starting off with Mario saving Peach from Bowser, like always. But a big twist ends up happening, and there's an enemy team, the Smithy Gang. And one of my favorite images is just seeing Bowser's castle and then the giant sword in it. I love seeing that at the startup menu. Yes. It is such a great scenery. But it does kind of just take a long time just to get there because obviously in the beginning of the game, you're kind of gonna ease through these enemies because these enemies maybe do one pint of pint of damage, one damage point, and Mario's doing big damage, so they die in one hit. So it's very by the books as you're getting there, and then you get to your first boss fight with Bowser, which I thought you can keep hitting him. But one thing that I liked about it is you're not going to make any progress until you attack the chandelier that Peach is on, but you're not thinking about that, right? You're not thinking about attacking the chandelier, you're thinking about attacking Bowser. So, the big twist happens, Mario gets separated from Peach, and Bowser goes somewhere, he's gone at this point. When his castle's taken over, Mario can't get back to save Peach, so we end up going to the Mushroom Kingdom, and, eventually Mario ends up meeting a character called Mallow, and this is your first partner. Mallow's like this little cloud character who is raised by frogs. I absolutely love the name of his father, who raised him. His name was Frog Fucius. I love that they kept a lot of the old names from these. But one thing I'll talk about when it comes to the combat is it is very simple. You have spells. Bowser can do stuff like scare people. Mario has his fireballs and his iconic jump that everybody keeps asking him to do. So you have to hit B in cutscenes, if you can even call it that. Um, you get Mallow. Mallow has more elemental attacks. He has thunder. He eventually learns attacks for like snow damage, things like that. I like the fact that he does have an ability, but that ability takes a turn and it doesn't do any damage. But it's when you can identify an enemy, find out its weaknesses and how much health it has left, and because if you do that, you end up piling it up in your little encyclopedia because you have enemies there and it keeps track of all that. So I think that's cool. I do like the fact that when you swap a character out, it does not use up your turn. You would expect that to happen. Basically, swap out the character and then you can't attack. So I actually really like the fact that you can swap characters and not waste any of your time doing so. Um, and I like the variety because at the in the end, your total partner count is other than Mario is a total of five, which is Mario, Mallow, Geno, Peach, and Bowser. Peach and Mallow are really good for healing. Bowser is very good at high damage. Geno is as well in magical attacks, and then obviously Mario is really good for the physical attacks. One thing I will say, Rusty, and I still struggle with this, is the timing of hitting A to defend or two
Yeah,
when you attack to get the bonus damage. Because I do like the spread damage that they did add when you do successfully do it. It's a good feeling to have when you pull it off. But it's a little frustrating because sometimes you get a Q, little exclamation point will pop up above the character's head. If you hit A, that time you'll do the extra damage. Getting the timing of when the enemy is going to hit you to defend, because if you defend, you actually will sometimes take zero damage or very little damage compared to what it could do to you. Um, but the timing on that, because sometimes the enemies will delay an attack on purpose to trick you. But over time, you'll eventually get it. I still struggle, but I've kind of gotten the majority of the beginning enemies down. So, but yeah, and another thing, the variety of enemies is amazing here. It's not just Koopas, Goombas, and things like that. I mean, uh we got Wigglers, we got Bombs, we got Shy Guys. Love seeing those guys back. Like, there's so much variety here.
I'm not gonna lie. Wiggler was beating my ass when I first ran into him. Wiggler was beating my ass, dude. Like that was
Me
one
too.
he damn near one shot my entire party, and I was like, holy fuck! Like that woke me up real quick when I was playing a couple days ago and I ran into him. I was like, holy shit! But yeah, I do like the enemy variety as well, and I think that I want to go back to your point of the block timing is a little weird.
Hmm.
And I think that some of that has to do with some of the enemies, the delay in their attacks. Like, 'cause I think that my basic understanding of it was, and buckle in, everyone. Rusty's about to talk about Souls games a little bit, but my belief was that it was kind of like Lies of P, where like the whole point is you want to time it just before the attack lands. And I feel like I've done that quite consistently, but I've not gotten the block consistently. And that's a little frustrating in the combat, especially when that can be the difference in you winning or losing a fight. That's a little frustrating. You feel like there should be a little bit more of an opening there, or that it should be a little bit that the timing should make a little bit more sense. But I digress. It's not that big of a game breaker. It is a little bit of a frustration. I will say, in getting the attack bonuses, figuring out the timing on those, I feel like the player is very rewarded. And I feel like you're rewarded with bigger damage to your primary target and splash damage that you mentioned to the enemies around. Especially because,
Yes.
again, in a fight where several of the boss fights, especially the ones early on, several of them, I think most of the boss fights are actually like this, where you'll have the main boss and that's your main target, but they'll also summon a bunch of smaller enemies. So for one, when
Yeah.
you're in Moleville, for example, and you're in the tunnels, the boss that you fight there will summon a bunch of bombs. And they'll
Yes.
start off, they'll be smaller, and then they'll be normal size, and they'll be a little bit bigger. And then there's one gigantic one that you get to at the very end.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's terrifying. But I think that the fact that that splash damage can really help you weed through those smaller enemies in a fight and can get through them a lot quicker to where, okay, you're not having to worry about using mushrooms to heal. You're not really having to worry about keeping your party alive. If you're able to get that bonus off pretty consistently, that can really turn the tide of a fight for you. And I think that that's a really good thing. And you feel rewarded again for figuring that timing out. I will never forget the click moment I had where I finally mastered Mario's timing. Because
There you
I kept
go.
wanting to press it early. I kept
Yeah.
wanting to do that, but when I started waiting and I realized that it was right as he was getting ready to lower his swing was when you needed to
Mm-hmm.
press it. It was that click moment where I was like, okay, I feel rewarded for finally figuring this out, and I've not missed it at all since then. So
Yeah.
I like
Yes.
that, and I think that in terms of the combat, that helps. I think the spells are really really cool. In fact, I love Geno's. I love his initial magic ability that he has, where it's you have to hold down the A button and you have
Yes.
5 stars pop up, and you're trying to time it to where you get all 5 stars to do maximum damage. But if you hold it for too long or you pull it off a little bit too early, you'll do a lot less damage because of that. So again,
Yeah.
you're rewarded for actually using that move properly. I like that. I feel like Mallow is one of the funniest characters Nintendo has ever
Yes.
made. Like Mallow, the
Yes.
fact that he believes he is a frog,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's a comment that you make early on, or someone makes it early on, where you're like, he thinks he's a frog or that he's a tadpole,
Yes.
but he looks nothing like one,
Right.
and it's really and it's there's this whole reveal with his grandfather who's like, by the way, it's time for you to know the truth. I actually found you
Yeah.
floating in a basket down the river when you were a baby. And it's hysterical, man. Like I'd always seen people say that Super Mario RPG was a really funny game, and I'm very, very pleased that it's met my expectations in that
Yeah.
department. That it is a very funny game. That whole story thread, Matt, is just hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. There's quite a few. I think the villains themselves are probably like the most hilarious, especially if you use Mallow's thought peak. They actually have like a little caption, and sometimes it is just really funny, and it helps out with a lot of these bosses because the caption that it says sometimes I'm not going to give too much away, but there are some enemies that can like clone themselves. Um, there's just a lot of funny going on. Another thing that I really liked, as far as the story goes, is Bowser's story. Basically, his minions are going down by the numbers more and more, and then at one, he just ends up by himself technically, and that's why he ends up teaming up with Mario, which is the very first time we ever saw Mario and Bowser team up. So that was a really cool thing that happened back then. And then Peach joining not too long after, and just the writing is on point. I absolutely miss this. Like I used to just love just even the dumbest little things. Like the toads are hilarious in this game. The villains are hilarious in this game. On top of that, like we're talking about the combat, the characters, but I also want the freaking graphics in this game are just gorgeous, especially the forest maze and the fact that they had the original composer from Square Enix do it all over again, and the remixes for these old tracks is just stunning. It is mind blowing, especially Forest's maze, and the combat is even got really catchy tunes. Um, God, I just love this game so much. The variety is amazing. You spend, it is worth the price. Um, I can't recommend it enough. It is just like one of those. It is a gem, and will forever remain one. And I really cannot wait for Thousand Year Door next year now because Mario RPGs before Super Paper Mario were just some of the top notch games, and we would only ever get a Mario RPG once per system, and there's a reason for that. These games are special, and they have a special place in my heart.
Absolutely, and I want to I want to double down on what you just said, really, and it's there's a lot of people that when it comes to the topic of a remake, they feel kind of awkward paying full price. And again, this year and last year as well with Last of Us Part One. I feel like is a great example of remakes when they're done properly are worth the price of admission. And I think what makes it even better, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't believe that Super Mario RPG was a full 60. I think that it was just
Yeah,
50.
it was 50. Yeah, 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 it was 50.
And that to me, I mean, to have $10 off the price, I mean, again, I would pay 60 for this. I think that it's a high
Yeah,
quality game. I think that you should absolutely, you should absolutely invest. If you've never played this game, this is the definitive way to play it. It's the same way I would say about Resident Evil 4, Dead Space that came out earlier this year.
yeah,
Last was Part 1 last year. Like, these are the definitive ways to play these. It's the best way to play these games. When remakes are done properly like this,
Yeah.
they're absolutely worth that price. And I feel like this is a
Mm.
great way to experience an old classic that a lot of people love. It's considered one of the best games of that era. It's one of the best Mario games of all time. And I think that the fact that it is so different from typical Mario, like, think about it this way, Matt. We got 2 Mario games this year.
We
I believe
did.
only 2. And they are nothing alike.
No, they're
And
not.
both of them, and I think what I like, Matt, most of all, is that when you look at Wonder, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, you look at Super Mario Bros. Wonder that's up for Game of the
Yes,
Year. You look at Super Mario RPG that's reviewed very well and is a really damn good remake. Both of these games are such drastic departures from that normal Mario
yeah,
formula. Wonder obviously is still a platformer at its heart, but Wonder was what happens when Nintendo goes all in on wacky and fun. I love that
exactly.
Nintendo the 2 Mario games that came out this year were 2 games that were vastly different from every other Mario game.
Yep, and I think that that is why, Mario is so popular because he's not just confined to one genre. He is in racing, he's in sports, he's in freaking Dance Dance Revolution, he's in the movies. Like, there's just no limit to Mario, especially in the 3D games, because Jesus Christ, Mario Odyssey is just pure perfection. Pure platforming perfection. Like, Jesus, I'm gonna go back and play that eventually. I really hope we get another one. I love 3D Mario games. And then, like, they're just so vastly different. It's the same thing with the 3D games. Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy, Mario 3D World, Odyssey, they're all different. But they're all using the same character and they're all using the same basic concept of, jumping and collecting coins.
Well, and
And
you also can't forget real time strategy with the Rabbids games as well. You can't
and
forget
those
that
as
as well.
well.
And so
Exactly.
I really do like that Nintendo, and you can factor in racing with Mario Kart. You could factor, I know that, and this is going to reference a YouTuber that we all know and somewhat tolerate, but it's one of the reasons why there is such a demand right now for a new Mario baseball game. It's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why people want to have another Mario baseball game because Superstar Baseball was great was great and so Superstar Sluggers was great as well. So it's one of those where you see just the variety and the true scope of just all these Mario games. None of that factors in the Paper Mario games as well. You mentioned Thousand Year Door. I'm excited that I get to finally experience that, and I feel like that will be the definitive way
Yes.
to experience that game as well. So I will say, for all the good there that we see there, I hope that Nintendo takes that and applies that to their other first party titles. They take that
I would
love, they
love
take
that.
that care,
Yeah.
and apply it to the Legend of Zelda games. Apply it to Pokemon, especially Pokemon. It with how the last couple of years have been for Pokemon, they absolutely need it there. Uh, with they did the same thing with Kirby with the Forgotten Lands. That was a really damn good game, and I think that I speak for all of us when I say I think it's probably high time for the next Donkey Kong game as well. I mean, we can't keep
Yes.
re-releasing Tropical Freeze. It would be nice to get a new F-Zero game or a Star Fox game. So
Yes.
there are several major franchises I would love for them to give this same love. I know that Mario was first. I get that. Mario was the mascot first. I get that. But take that love and apply it everywhere else because it's clear here that when Mario is given the love that it deserves, you get games like this versus getting a game like fucking Strikers Battle League last year, which was a huge
Uh,
disappointment. So Super
yeah.
Mario RPG, Matt. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to say before we take this episode to the end?
Really, I just want to add that I really like the item management and the equipment because that really can change how everything goes in battle. Because Mario can go from using his fist, from using a shell. Bowser can go from using just his claws. He goes from swinging a chain chomp. Like, there's just so much variety here. And honestly, I'll even add this. Um, I like the new thing that has where you, depending on how full your meter is in battle, you get these new things that will either say another one, which basically means you'll get to attack again, or your attack can go up, your defense goes up, or something that says lucky, which basically means that you'll probably do more damage on the next hit. Those kind of things just is makes the combat interesting to me, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm hoping that we end up getting an RPG remake not remake, sequel. I would love to get an RPG sequel.
I'm not gonna lie. There is always that thought that pops into my head, especially when it's one-offs like this. Like I know Last of Us Part 1 is a weird one, and Dead Space Remake and Resident Evil 4. Like those, obviously, there were games in those series that came after those games. But when it comes to remakes like this, where it is one-off games, that is always kind of in the back of my head of, is there a reason they're remaking this, or is it just to cash in? And I'd like to be optimistic and think that maybe there's plans for a sequel. I'd like to be optimistic and think that. I don't know. Obviously, we have no insider information. After all, we're just a small-time podcast. But I would, after playing this, and I'm not done with it yet, I plan on playing it a lot more because I'm really enjoying it. I've really enjoyed what I've played so far. I really do hope that we do. I hope we get another game. I hope we get a new entry into the series. It might not be till a few years from now. But, hey, GTA 6 finally got fucking announced, so anything is possible. That's what this week has taught me. So that is a good spot to go ahead and call this an episode. So that is going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Side Mission Pod. You can check us out on Facebook as well at Side Mission Podcast. For Matt, for Kyle in the producer's chair, I'm Rusty. Thanks for listening.